The HOA president stood in my Kentucky driveway with fake police officers, threatening to seize my $3 million mansion by force. 3 days after I'd escaped her reign of terror in Georgia. This was the same woman who told me my wife and daughters deserved to die from COVID-19 because I hadn't paid a $5 maintenance fee. The same tyrant who'd driven me to the edge of sanity while I was burying my entire family. But what Brenda Collier didn't know was that Pinnacle National Insurance, the company that gifted me this mansion to honor my late wife's service, was the exact same company insuring her Georgia home. And my phone was recording every illegal threat, every impersonation, every moment of her complete destruction. If you've ever wondered how far a power-hungry HOA president will go to control someone's life, even across state lines, this true story will leave you speechless. What would you do if the person who terrorized you during the worst tragedy of your life tracked you down 400 miles away? Have you ever lost someone and had a neighbor make it worse? Have you dealt with an HOA that showed zero compassion during your darkest hour? This, Karen thought, threatening a grieving widower would break him. She had no idea she was about to lose everything she'd spent years building. Stay with me to see how one phone recording brought down an HOA tyrant who thought she was untouchable across state lines. If you've battled a cruel HOA president or know someone who has, hit that like button right now. You're about to watch karma deliver the most satisfying justice. Now let me take you back to the darkest 3 weeks of my life, when I lost everything that mattered. And one woman made sure I'd never forget it. I buried my wife on Monday. I buried my first daughter on Wednesday. I buried my second daughter on Friday. By the following Tuesday, the HOA president was at my door with a violation notice. My name is Trevor Nichols. I'm 42 years old. For 20 years, I worked as a grief counselor in Maplewood Heights, Georgia, helping families process the kind of loss I never thought would touch me. Winter of 2023 changed everything. COVID-19 took my wife Simone first. She was 39. 15 years at Pinnacle National Insurance, never missed a day of work, Employee of the Year 3 times. She kissed me goodbye on a Monday morning, complaining of a headache. By Friday, she was on a ventilator. 7 days later, she was gone. Our daughters got sick the same week. Zara was 9, clarinet player, straight A student, wanted to be a veterinarian. India was 6, obsessed with stuffed elephants, never met a person she didn't try to befriend. 3 funerals in 8 days, 3 caskets, 3 eulogies I don't remember giving. The house felt wrong without their voices. Zara's clarinet sat in the corner where she'd practiced every evening at 6. India's stuffed elephant still guarded her unmade bed. Simone's coffee mug, the one that said, "World's Best Mom," sat unwashed in the sink because washing it meant accepting she'd never use it again. The neighbors understood. They left casseroles on the porch without knocking. They sent cards with messages I couldn't read. They gave me the one thing grief demands: space to break apart. I stopped going to work. My supervisor granted emergency leave, 12 weeks, paid, no questions asked. My clients got reassigned to other counselors. The irony wasn't lost on me. The grief counselor couldn't handle his own grief. Bills started piling up. Funeral costs, medical bills insurance didn't cover, the mortgage, utilities. And buried somewhere in that mountain of paper, a $5 HOA maintenance fee I'd missed during funeral week. I spent most days in bed. Sometimes I'd walk through the house touching things: Zara's clarinet, India's toys, Simone's favorite sweater. I prayed a lot, begging God to explain why he'd take all 3, begging for strength I didn't have, begging to wake up and discover it was all a nightmare. On the 8th day after Simone's funeral, while I was finally showering for the first time in 3 days, my doorbell rang. I ignored it. It rang again, and again, and again. When I finally opened the door in my bathrobe, dripping water on the hardwood, Brenda Collier stood there with her red blazer, her clipboard, and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Nichols," she said, not offering condolences, "we need to discuss your unpaid maintenance fee." She didn't say, "I'm sorry for your loss." She said, "That's perfect treatment from nature to you because you didn't pay the $5 maintenance fee." Brenda Collier looked like she belonged in a country club catalog. Crisp red blazer over a white silk blouse, pearl earrings catching the afternoon sun, not a hair out of place despite the Georgia humidity. Her clipboard was leather-bound, monogrammed with her initials in gold. She stood on my porch like she owned it. Behind her, I could see Mrs. Chen across the street peeking through her curtains. The Harrisons next door stood frozen on their lawn, mid-conversation, watching. Everyone heard what was about to happen. No one moved to stop it. "Mr. Nichols, I understand you've experienced some unfortunate losses." Her tone suggested she was discussing a missed trash pickup, not 3 deaths. "However, the HOA maintenance fee of $5 was due 2 weeks ago. You're now subject to late penalties." I stood there, water from my hair dripping onto the welcome mat Simone had bought last spring. "My wife died," I finally managed. "My daughters." "That's perfect treatment from nature to you because you didn't pay the $5 maintenance fee," she interrupted, making a note on her clipboard. Mrs. Chen gasped loud enough to hear. Mr. Harrison stepped forward. "Brenda, that's completely... If anyone else has commentary..." Brenda's voice rose to a shout that carried across 3 lawns. "You can either leave Maplewood Heights permanently or prepare to pay a $7,000 fine for interference with HOA business. Your choice." The silence that followed was absolute. Mr. Harrison stepped back. Mrs. Chen's curtains closed. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. My brain couldn't process what just happened. This woman, this HOA president who'd lived 3 streets over for 4 years, just told me my family deserved to die. Over $5. And she terrorized my entire neighborhood into silence with a single threat. I felt something crack inside me. Not grief this time. Rage, pure, white-hot fury that I'd never felt toward another human being in my life. But I was too broken to fight, too exhausted to argue, too numb to even cry. Have you ever witnessed someone kick a person when they're down? Has a neighbor ever said something so cruel you couldn't believe it was real? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear how you responded. Brenda handed me a formal violation notice. $5 late fee plus $50 processing charge plus $100 failure to respond promptly penalty. $150 total, due in 72 hours. As she walked away, heels clicking on my driveway, she called back, "Oh, and Mr. Nichols, your lawn is half an inch too high. That's another violation. I'll send the paperwork tomorrow." I looked down at the notice in my shaking hands and realized something that terrified me. I wanted her to suffer. And I'd never wanted to hurt anyone in my entire life. The violation notices kept coming, 1 every 2 days, while I could barely remember to eat. 2 weeks after Brenda's visit, my kitchen table disappeared under a mountain of envelopes, all from the Maplewood Heights HOA, all bearing Brenda's signature. Mailbox post discoloration, $75. Trash can visible from street after 7 p.m., $100. Holiday decorations not removed within 24 hours of holiday end, $150. Simone died on December 18th. These notices claimed our Christmas wreath was a violation on December 26th. The day I was planning my second daughter's funeral. I sat there at 3 a.m., reading them by the light of my phone, and felt something break inside me that I'd spent 20 years helping other people fix. The fines accumulated to $847, bills I couldn't pay while on unpaid leave. My employer's patience was running thin. 12 weeks of emergency leave was generous, but my supervisor needed to know when I'd return. My clients needed consistency. The practice needed coverage, but I couldn't function. Couldn't eat without forcing myself. Couldn't sleep without nightmares. Couldn't answer the phone without panic attacks. The professional counselor who'd helped hundreds of people through trauma couldn't help himself. The shame was suffocating. Neighbors left notes under my door. "We're praying for you. Call if you need anything. We're so sorry about Brenda." But no one confronted her publicly. No one stood up at HOA meetings. The fear she'd planted was too deep. I stopped showering, stopped checking mail, stopped answering my door. Dark thoughts crept in, thoughts about ending it. Thoughts that my family was in heaven and I was stuck in hell, and maybe I should just join them. On a Tuesday morning at 4:47 a.m., I stood in my bathroom holding a bottle of sleeping pills, trying to calculate how many it would take. That's when I called the county mental health crisis line. The counselor listened to my story, the deaths, the HOA president, the violation notices, the thoughts about ending it. Her voice was gentle. "Mr. Nichols, what you're experiencing is a normal response to abnormal cruelty. You're not broken. You're being actively traumatized by someone exploiting your grief." Those words, actively traumatized, changed everything. This wasn't just grief. This was abuse. And I'd spent my entire career teaching people they didn't have to accept abuse. Has grief ever made you unrecognizable to yourself? Have you ever needed help but felt too broken to ask for it? Share how you found your way back. Others need to hear it. The next morning, I enrolled in an intensive outpatient mental health program. 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Group therapy, individual counseling, medication management. I was learning to survive. 1 day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 breath at a time. But what I didn't know was that while I was learning to survive, a miracle was being prepared 400 miles away. 3 weeks after burying my family, 2 people in business suits knocked on my door, and everything changed. I almost didn't answer. Another knock probably meant another violation notice, another fine I couldn't pay, another reminder that Brenda Collier owned my life. But something made me open the door. Maybe desperation. Maybe curiosity. Maybe God. "Mr. Trevor Nichols?" the woman asked, professional but kind. "Yes." "I'm Jennifer Martinez from Pinnacle National Insurance. This is my colleague, David Park. May we come in? We have important news about your wife's employment benefits." I let them in. They sat on my couch, the one covered in unfolded laundry I hadn't touched in days. They didn't seem to notice or care. The woman opened a leather portfolio and slid a photograph across my coffee table. A 3-story brick mansion with white columns and gardens that looked like something from a Southern architecture magazine. This property was purchased by Pinnacle in 1987 as executive housing. We've converted it into our Legacy Honors program. Your wife, Simone Nichols, gave 15 years of exceptional service to our company. Perfect attendance, multiple Employee of the Year awards, mentored 47 new hires, and maintained a client satisfaction rating of 98.7%. When she passed, her file was flagged for our highest recognition. The man beside her placed a key ring on top of the photograph. "Mr. Nichols, this home is yours, free and clear. No mortgage, no property taxes for 10 years, no strings. It's our way of honoring her legacy and taking care of the family she left behind. I stared at the keys, at the photograph, at these two strangers offering me an escape I hadn't dared to hope for. "I don't understand," I whispered, picking up the keys like they might disappear. "Why would you do this?" "Because companies are people," Jennifer said gently, "and people should honor the ones who gave them their best years. Simone spoke about you and your daughters in every team meeting. She was proud of her family. We want you to have a place where you can heal without financial stress." I looked at the photo again. The wraparound porch, the oak trees, the distance from everything that hurt. "When can I move in?" "It's ready now. The deed is already in your name. If you were given a miracle escape from your worst nightmare, would you take it immediately or stay to fight? What would you do?" That afternoon, another violation notice arrived from Brenda. Lawn service disruption during my therapy hours, $200 fine. Threat of lien filing within 30 days if I didn't pay the accumulated $1,047. I looked at the notice, then at the mansion keys, then at the empty house where my family used to live. Staying in Georgia meant staying under Brenda's control. Leaving meant abandoning the only home my daughters had ever known. But it also meant survival. The choice was obvious. I packed everything meaningful into my Subaru by midnight. Photo albums, the girls' favorite toys, Simone's jewelry box, my clothes. I left the furniture, the dishes, everything else. At 6 a.m., I taped an envelope to the front door addressed to Brenda Collier. Inside was a check for $155, the original fine she'd claimed I owed. Nothing more, no note, no explanation, no forwarding address. By 7 a.m., I was on I-75 North, Georgia, disappearing in my rearview mirror, believing I'd never see Brenda Collier again. I was wrong. For 3 perfect days, I remembered what peace felt like. And then her black SUV rolled into my driveway. The mansion was even more beautiful than the photograph. Built in 1891, renovated in 2019, it sat on 2 acres of manicured lawns and century-old oak trees. The wraparound porch had a swing that looked over gardens Simone would have loved. Inside, hardwood floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. The master bedroom had floor-to-ceiling windows facing east, sunrise every morning. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. I woke up without violation notices under my door. I drank coffee on the porch without watching for Brenda's red blazer. Kentucky neighbors welcomed me. Mrs. Patterson from next door brought homemade cookies. The Williamson family across the street invited me to their church. Everyone was kind. No one was afraid. By day 3, I was starting to believe I might actually survive this. Maybe even heal. Maybe even find purpose again. I scheduled therapy appointments in Lexington, made plans to join a local grief support group. Started thinking about eventually returning to counseling work, helping people like me who'd lost everything. Hope felt fragile, dangerous, like something that could shatter at any moment. Have you ever felt safe for the first time in months, only to have that safety ripped away? How did you handle it? I was unloading groceries from my car when I heard it. Tires crunching on the circular gravel driveway. A black Cadillac Escalade with Georgia plates. My stomach dropped. The driver's door opened. Red blazer, blonde hair, clipboard. Brenda Collier stepped out like she owned the place, flanked by 2 men in uniforms that looked almost, but not quite, like real police. She smiled when she saw my face. "Hello, Mr. Nichols. Surprised to see me? You didn't think you could run away from your HOA obligations, did you?" My hand was already reaching for my phone. She brought fake cops to threaten me. But I brought something more powerful, a recording that would destroy her life. The two men flanking Brenda wore black tactical pants, navy polo shirts with embroidered patches reading HOA Enforcement Division, and leather utility belts that held radios, handcuffs, and what looked like pepper spray. But their boots were wrong. Commercial hiking boots, not regulation law enforcement. Their badges were clipped to their belts, not pinned to shirts. And the patches on their sleeves said, Community Standards Officer, a title that doesn't exist in any legitimate police department. I'd counseled enough cops over the years to know the difference between real authority and costume store intimidation. My grief counselor training kicked in. Stay calm. Observe details. Don't escalate. Document everything. I pulled out my phone and hit record. Held it at chest level, camera pointed directly at Brenda. Mr. Nichols. Brenda's voice dripped with false authority. You fled Georgia with $747 in unpaid HOA violations. That debt travels with you. This property is now subject to lien enforcement under Interstate Homeowner Association reciprocity agreements. There's no such thing as interstate HOA reciprocity, I said, my voice steady. One of the fake officers stepped forward. Sir, we're authorized to secure this property pending resolution of, show me your badges, I interrupted. Real ones. With badge numbers I can verify with Kentucky State Police. The man's hand moved to his belt, then stopped. Brenda's face flushed. We don't have to prove anything to you. Either you pay the fines today, or we'll seize this mansion by force if we have to. I tapped my phone screen, ending the recording, and smiled. You just committed a federal crime, on camera, at my property, in front of witnesses. I pointed to my neighbor across the street. Mrs. Patterson, phone also raised, recording. Federal law, Title 18, Section 912. Impersonating a federal officer carries 3 years in prison. Impersonating state police? That's a felony in Kentucky. And threatening to seize property you have no legal claim to? That's extortion. Brenda's composure shattered. You can't prove anything, she stammered, backing toward her SUV. Delete that video right now, or what? I stepped off my porch. You'll have your costume store cops arrest me? Go ahead. Real Kentucky State Police are already on their way. My neighbor called them 3 minutes ago. The sound of distant sirens confirmed it. Brenda and her fake officers scrambled into the Escalade and peeled out of my driveway, gravel spraying. But it didn't matter. I had everything I needed. If someone showed up at your door with fake cops threatening to take your home, would you stay calm enough to record evidence? How would you react? And I knew exactly who to send it to. Because the name on her vehicle's insurance card, visible in my footage when her door opened, said Pinnacle National Insurance. The same company that gave me this house. The insurance company that saved my life was about to end hers. And Brenda had no idea the noose was tightening. I spent 2 hours that night reviewing the footage frame by frame. Zoom in. Enhance. Screenshot document. There it was, clear as day. When Brenda's SUV door opened during her panicked escape, the insurance card holder on her visor showed the Pinnacle National logo. Policy number partially visible. I'd worked in mental health long enough to understand systems. Insurance companies don't just cover claims, they manage risk. And policyholders who commit felonies, massive liability risk. The Pinnacle National website had a section I'd never noticed before. Report fraud or misconduct by policyholders. The page explained that insurance fraud extends beyond false claims. It includes criminal activity committed by insured parties that creates liability exposure for the company. If a policyholder commits crimes while insured, and those crimes result in lawsuits, Pinnacle could be held financially responsible. That meant Brenda's fake police stunt wasn't just a crime against me. It was a massive liability risk for her insurance company. And Pinnacle took liability very, very seriously. I filled out the online form, uploaded the video, wrote a detailed timeline, included documentation of her Georgia harassment, the violations, the cruel statement about my family, everything. Within 30 minutes, my phone rang. Unknown number, Kentucky area code. Mr. Nichols, this is Rebecca Williams, compliance officer with Pinnacle National Insurance. I just reviewed your submission. Can we speak? Yes, absolutely. You're saying you have video evidence of our policyholder committing federal impersonation crimes while attempting to extort you? Yes. And she traveled from Georgia to Kentucky specifically to commit these crimes. Interstate. Which makes it worse under federal law. A pause. Keyboard clicking. And you mentioned she's an HOA president? Does she carry directors and officers insurance through us as well? I believe so. The HOA is called Maplewood Heights. More clicking. Mr. Nichols, I'm escalating this to our criminal liability division immediately. Can you email that footage to the address I'm about to give you? We'll need to review this within 24 hours. Already sent. Check your inbox. Hold, please. Silence. Then, confirmed received. Mr. Nichols, someone will contact you tomorrow morning. In the meantime, if this individual contacts you again, call the local police immediately and inform them we're conducting a fraud investigation. Do not engage directly. Understood. One more thing. How much trouble is she in? The officer's professional tone cracked slightly. If this footage shows what you say it does, we're dropping her policies and flagging her across the industry. She won't be insurable, and we'll be cooperating fully with any criminal investigation. Sir, you just did us a favor. Policyholders who commit felonies are liabilities we eliminate immediately. I hung up and sat in the dark mansion, staring at my phone. For 3 weeks, I'd buried my family while Brenda kicked me. For 2 weeks, I'd received violation notices while fighting suicidal thoughts. For 3 days, I'd believed I was finally safe. Now I had a weapon Brenda couldn't fight. Have you ever discovered that the person who hurt you made a critical mistake that gave you all the power? What did you do with that moment? That night, I couldn't sleep, but not from anxiety, from anticipation. At 11:47 p.m., the email arrived. Pinnacle National Insurance, urgent policy matter. The email was addressed to Brenda Collier, CC'd to me as affected party, and the subject line made me smile wider than I had in months. Notice of immediate policy cancellation and fraud investigation. Action required within 48 hours. Attached was my video, a legal analysis confirming multiple felonies, and a demand that Brenda contact their legal department immediately. The final line was perfect. Failure to respond will result in criminal referral to FBI and Kentucky State Police. I had every email address for Maplewood Heights HOA board members. They were public record on the community website. I forwarded Pinnacle's email to all 7 board members. It was time they knew exactly who they'd been following. Brenda's perfect life started collapsing, 1 phone call, 1 cancellation, 1 investigation at a time. My phone rang 17 times in 3 hours, all from Georgia numbers I didn't recognize. The voicemails told the story. Mr. Nichols, this is Robert Chen from Maplewood Heights HOA Board. I just received the most disturbing email about our president. Please call me immediately. Trevor, this is Nancy Williams, board secretary. I had no idea Brenda was issuing those violations in the board's name. We never voted on any of those fines. Mr. Nichols, this is James Patterson, HOA legal counsel. I need to understand what happened in Kentucky because if it's true, Brenda acted completely outside board authority and may have exposed us to massive liability. They weren't defending her. They were trying to protect themselves. The rats were abandoning the sinking ship. I called Robert Chen first. His voice was shaking. Mr. Nichols, I owe you an apology. Several of us do. I watched Brenda berate you after your family died, and I said nothing. I thought she was just strict. I didn't know she was fabricating violations and pocketing fine money. Wait. What? She was pocketing money. The insurance company's email triggered an audit. We found $23,000 in questionable transactions over 2 years. Payments to enforcement contractors that don't exist, violation fees that never made it into HOA accounts. Trevor, she was running a scam. My hands went numb. This wasn't just harassment. This was organized theft. What happens now? Emergency board meeting tonight. We're voting to remove her as president, terminate her access to HOA funds, and refer everything to the district attorney. And Trevor, we're refunding every penny she collected from you, with interest and a formal apology. I sat down hard on my porch swing. Mr. Chen, Robert, thank you. But it's not just about me. How many other families did she do this to? A long pause. We're still counting. At least 19 households over 4 years. Some families left the neighborhood because they couldn't afford her fines. One elderly couple lost their home to foreclosure. Rage flooded back. Hot, consuming, righteous. I want their names. I want to contact them. They deserve to know justice is coming. I'll send you everything we have. Have you ever watched someone's lies catch up to them all at once? How did it feel to see the truth finally exposed? That evening, another call. Kentucky number. Professional voice. Mr. Nichols, this is Special Agent David Martinez with the FBI's Louisville field office. We've received a criminal referral regarding an incident at your residence involving impersonation of law enforcement officers and interstate extortion. Do you have time to discuss this? My heart hammered. The FBI? This was real. Yes, absolutely. I have video evidence of everything. We've already received it from Pinnacle National Insurance. Sir, I'm calling to inform you that we're opening a formal investigation. We'll need a detailed statement from you, but based on preliminary review, we have probable cause for multiple federal charges. What kind of charges? Title 18, Section 922, impersonating a federal officer. Title 18, Section 1951, interstate extortion. Conspiracy charges for the 2 individuals who accompanied Ms. Collier. If convicted on all counts, she's looking at 12 to 18 years federal custody. 12 to 18 years. For harassing a grieving widower over $5. The email arrived at 9:15 p.m. from Robert Chen. Unanimous vote, 6-0. Brenda Collier removed as HOA president effective immediately. Building access revoked. All authority terminated. Criminal referral filed with Fulton County District Attorney. You were right to run, Trevor. And you were right to fight back. She can't hurt anyone else now. I read it 3 times. Then I opened my laptop and Googled Brenda Collier arrest, just to see if it had happened yet. No results. But I knew it was coming. Because the next morning, I had a scheduled call with an FBI agent from their white-collar crime division. And the FBI doesn't lose. When the FBI calls about your case, You know justice isn't just possible, it's inevitable. Special Agent David Martinez had the kind of voice that made you believe justice existed. Calm, thorough, completely unimpressed by excuses. Mr. Nichols, I've reviewed your documentation. In 20 years with the Bureau, I've seen corporate fraud, government corruption, organized crime. But HOA cases? They're uniquely cruel because the victims are trapped in their own homes. Ms. Collier created a systematic pattern of abuse, financial exploitation, and intimidation. And then she crossed state lines with fake law enforcement to continue that abuse. That's federal jurisdiction. And that's where people like her learn that volunteer authority ends where criminal law begins. We talked for 90 minutes. He asked detailed questions about every interaction with Brenda. Dates, times, witnesses, documentation. What happens to her now? I finally asked. We've coordinated with Georgia authorities. She's facing state charges there for embezzlement and harassment. We're adding federal charges for the Kentucky incident, impersonating officers, interstate extortion, conspiracy. If convicted on all counts, she's looking at 12 to 18 years. My breath caught. That seems severe. Mr. Nichols, she hired 2 men to dress as police officers, drove 400 miles, and then threatened to seize your home, a home given to you to honor your deceased wife. She did this knowing you just lost your entire family. That's not an HOA fine. That's calculated cruelty, and the law treats calculated cruelty very seriously. When will she be arrested? Already done. TSA flagged her at Atlanta Airport 2 hours ago trying to board a flight to Mexico. She had $47,000 cash in her luggage, likely the money she embezzled from your HOA. She's in federal custody now. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Brenda Collier, the woman who told me my family deserved to die, who terrorized an entire neighborhood, who tracked me across state lines, was in handcuffs. Mr. Nichols, you still there? Yeah, sorry, just processing. Understandable. One more thing. Local news in Atlanta is picking up the story. You should expect media requests. You're not obligated to speak to anyone, but if you choose to, it could help other HOA abuse victims come forward. I'll think about it. Good. We'll be in touch about trial preparation. Thank you for your cooperation and your courage in documenting everything. You made our job easy. If you could send a message to every HOA president who abuses their power, what would you say? Drop it in the comments. I turned on the TV that evening, Channel 7 Atlanta News. The footage showed Brenda in handcuffs, red blazer wrinkled, hair disheveled, being led through Atlanta Airport by federal agents. The chyron read, HOA president arrested for fraud, impersonation, extortion. The anchor's voice. A Maplewood Heights HOA president faces multiple felony charges tonight after allegedly embezzling thousands from homeowners and using fake police officers to threaten a Kentucky resident. More at 11. My phone buzzed. Text from Robert Chen. Channel 7 News wants to interview the board about reforms. Would you be willing to join us? People need to hear your story. I stared at Brenda's photo on the screen. The woman who told me my family deserved to die, who terrorized me in my grief, who thought she was above the law. Then I typed my response. I'll do it. Not for revenge. For every homeowner still living in fear of people like her. Justice isn't just about punishment. It's about making sure it never happens again. The news interview wasn't about me. It was about the thousands of homeowners still trapped under HOA tyrants who needed to know they could fight back. The Channel 7 crew arrived at my Kentucky mansion on a Tuesday morning. 3 cameras, 2 producers, veteran reporter Janet Richardson. She sat across from me on my porch, the gardens behind us. Morning light perfect for filming. Mr. Nichols, thank you for speaking with us. Let's start at the beginning. When did you first realize your HOA president was targeting you? I told the story. All of it. The deaths, the funerals, the cruel statement, the violation notices, the mental health crisis, the miracle mansion, the Kentucky confrontation, the recording, the arrest. Janet's eyes welled up twice during filming. The camera operators looked angry. What do you want viewers to understand about HOA abuse? She asked. That it's not about petty disputes or neighborhood drama. It's about power. Some people get a little authority and use it to help their community. Others use it to hurt vulnerable people because it makes them feel important. Brenda Collier saw a man who just buried his entire family and decided he deserved more pain. That's not leadership. That's predatory behavior. And it's happening in HOAs across America right now. The interview aired Tuesday evening at 6 and 11. By Wednesday morning, my email had 347 messages. By Friday, over 2,000. Each one told the same story in different words. I thought I was alone. I didn't know I could fight back. My HOA president does the exact same things. Thank you for speaking up. One message stood out. From an elderly woman in Florida. They fined my husband into bankruptcy before he died. I lost our home. Seeing that woman in handcuffs gave me the first peace I've felt in 3 years. You saved people you'll never meet. National HOA reform organizations reached out. Attorneys specializing in property rights. State legislators drafting oversight bills. The story went viral. 3 million views in 48 hours. Brenda's mugshot became a symbol of HOA corruption nationwide. Has sharing your story ever helped someone else escape a similar situation? That's the real power of speaking up. Tell me about it. The package arrived from Maplewood Heights HOA on a Thursday. Certified mail, signature required. Inside was a check for $7,894.12. Every illegal fine Brenda had charged me, plus statutory interest, plus a $2,000 community healing contribution, voted by the new board. Attached was a handwritten note from Robert Chen. Trevor, the board voted unanimously to name our new community park after Simone, Zara, and India. We want their legacy to be kindness, not the cruelty that took them from you. Will you come to the dedication? I sat on my Kentucky porch, holding that check, and cried for the first time since the arrests. Not from sadness, from something I hadn't felt in 9 months. Hope. Watching Brenda's defense attorney try to explain away federal crimes was almost as satisfying as the verdict that followed. 8 months after her arrest, the federal trial began in Louisville. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected from TV shows. Plain wood benches, fluorescent lights, the seal of the federal court behind the judge's bench. Brenda sat at the defense table in a gray suit, nothing like the red blazer she'd worn like armor. She looked smaller, tired, human. But I remembered what she said 3 days after I buried my daughters. And I felt nothing. The prosecutor was a woman named Karen Hayes. Ironic, given the defendant. She was sharp, methodical, relentless. Mr. Nichols, please state your name and occupation for the record. Trevor Nichols. I'm a licensed grief counselor. And where were you living in December 2023? Maplewood Heights, Georgia, until I moved to Kentucky in January 2024. Can you describe what happened on December 21st, 2023, 3 days after your wife's funeral? I took a breath, looked at the jury, 12 faces watching me. The defendant, Brenda Collier, came to my home. I just buried my wife and 2 daughters. All 3 died from COVID-19 within 3 weeks. Neighbors had been supportive, bringing food, giving me space to grieve. But Ms. Collier knocked on my door and told me that my family's deaths were perfect treatment from nature because I hadn't paid a $5 HOA maintenance fee. Several jurors visibly recoiled. One woman covered her mouth. "What did you do?" I was too shocked to respond, too broken. I just took the violation notice she handed me and closed the door. Did the harassment stop there? No. Over the next 2 weeks, she sent multiple violation notices for fabricated issues: lawn height, trash can placement, holiday decorations I was supposedly required to remove while I was planning my daughter's funerals. The fines accumulated to over $800. The prosecutor showed the jury copies of every violation notice, Brenda's signature on each one. Then they played the Kentucky video. Brenda's voice filled the courtroom. "We'll seize this mansion by force if we have to." My voice, calm and steady. "Show me your badges. Real ones." The fake officer's hesitation. Brenda's threats. My citation of federal law. When it ended, the jury looked at Brenda with disgust. The defense attorney tried. He argued mental stress, misunderstanding, overzealous enforcement. But the evidence was overwhelming. Video footage, financial records showing embezzlement, testimony from the fake officers who'd taken plea deals, statements from 19 Maplewood Heights families describing identical abuse. The prosecutor's final question was simple. "Mr. Nichols, what do you want the jury to understand about HOA abuse?" I looked at Brenda. She wouldn't meet my eyes. That it's not about money or property. It's about power. Some people get a little authority and use it to help their community. Others use it to hurt vulnerable people because it makes them feel important. Brenda Collier saw a man who just buried his entire family and decided he deserved more pain. That's not an HOA president. That's a predator. And predators should never have power over anyone. The defense attorney objected. The judge sustained it. But the jury had heard enough. They deliberated 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. If you had to face the person who hurt you in court, what would you want them to know? What would justice look like for you? The judge asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement before sentencing. I'd prepared nothing. But I stood anyway. Your Honor, 14 years ago I became a grief counselor because I wanted to help people through the worst moments of their lives. Last year I experienced the worst moment of mine. And instead of receiving compassion, I received cruelty from someone who should have known better. I don't want revenge. I want accountability. I want every HOA board member in America to see this case and understand that authority is a responsibility, not a weapon. And I want Ms. Collier to have 14 years to think about the difference. The judge nodded. Mr. Nichols, your impact statement is granted. Ms. Collier, you are sentenced to 168 months in federal custody. Brenda's sob echoed through the courtroom. I walked out and didn't look back. The park dedication wasn't about a memorial. It was about a community learning to trust again. 3 months after the trial, I returned to Georgia for the first time since fleeing. The drive down I-75 felt different. No panic, no dread. Just quiet anticipation. Maplewood Heights looked the same. Manicured lawns, neat sidewalks, the subdivision sign freshly painted. But something felt lighter, like a weight had been lifted. The park sat where old detention ponds used to be. 2 acres of playground equipment, walking trails, flower gardens, and a bronze plaque with 3 names and 3 smiling faces. Zara and India on swings, mid-laugh. Simone between them, arms around both. The inscription read, In memory of Simone, Zara, and India Nichols, beloved family, cherished community members, forever remembered. Below it. May this space represent the compassion they deserved and the community standards we commit to uphold. I stood there crying while families I didn't know played in the park named after my girls. Robert Chen approached, hand extended. Trevor, thank you for coming. Thank you for doing this. It's the least we could do. The board voted unanimously. Every member wanted to honor your family. Nancy Williams, the board secretary, approached with red eyes. Trevor, I don't know if you can forgive us for not stopping her sooner. I hugged her. You were scared. She weaponized fear. That's not your fault. We should have been braver. And now you are. The new bylaws, the appeals process, the transparency requirements, that's bravery. That's how you honor my family. Not with guilt, with change. The dedication ceremony drew over 200 residents. Children played, families picnicked, neighbors talked without fear. James Patterson, the HOA attorney, gave a speech about the reforms. New violation procedures require written warnings before fines. All fines capped at $50 maximum. Mandatory appeals process with third-party review. Financial audits every quarter. Board meetings live-streamed with public comment periods. Zero tolerance for harassment or abuse of authority. The crowd applauded. Robert Chen stepped to the microphone. These changes exist because one man refused to stay silent. Trevor Nichols lost everything. And instead of letting bitterness consume him, he fought for accountability. Not just for himself, for all of us. Trevor, would you like to say anything? I hadn't planned to speak, but I walked to the microphone anyway. Simone would have loved this park. Zara would have played clarinet here during summer concerts. India would have made friends with every kid on that playground. They're not here to see it. But you are. And what you do with this space, with this second chance at being a real community, that's their legacy. Make it count. Have you ever seen a toxic community transform into something healthy? What made the difference? Share the hope. As families played in the park named after my girls, a woman approached holding her daughter's hand. Mr. Nichols? I'm Rachel Morrison. I lived 3 streets over. Brenda fined us into selling our home 5 years ago. When I heard about the trial, I cried for days. I thought we were the only ones. My daughter was 4 when we left. She's 9 now, same age your Zara was. She knelt down. Sweetheart, tell Mr. Nichols what we talked about. The little girl looked up at me with solemn eyes. My mom says you stopped the mean lady so other kids don't have to move away. Thank you for saving our neighborhood. I couldn't respond. I just nodded. Because that's what justice actually looks like, not revenge, but kids who get to stay in their homes. One case in Georgia sparked a movement that changed HOA laws in 17 states. Proof that standing up matters more than you think. 6 months after the trial, I stood in the Georgia State Capitol building, marble floors, soaring ceilings, portraits of legislators from centuries past. I'd never imagined I'd testify before the state legislature. But there I was, in a committee hearing room, explaining to elected officials why HOA boards needed oversight. My case was extreme, I told them. But the dynamics that enabled it aren't. Unchecked authority, lack of transparency, no meaningful appeals process. These exist in thousands of HOAs across Georgia. We're not asking you to eliminate HOAs. We're asking you to ensure they serve communities instead of controlling them. A skeptical senator leaned forward. Mr. Nichols, aren't you just bitter about one bad experience? Most HOA boards are volunteers trying their best. Senator, I've received over 4,000 emails from Georgia homeowners describing similar abuse. I've documented 73 cases where HOA presidents embezzled funds. I've found 31 instances of illegal fines exceeding state maximums. And I've spoken with 19 families who lost their homes to fraudulent liens. This isn't one bad experience. It's a systemic problem that only seems rare because victims are isolated and scared. I'm standing here because I got lucky. I had resources, I had evidence, and I had nothing left to lose. Most victims have none of those things. This law gives them a fighting chance. The room was silent. 3 weeks later, the bill passed. Bipartisan support, 142 to 38 in the House, 44-12 in the Senate. The Homeowner Protection and HOA Accountability Act, nicknamed Trevor's Law. Key provisions: all fines capped at $100 per violation. Mandatory warning period before fines assessed. Third-party appeals process for disputes. Quarterly financial audits required. Criminal penalties for HOA board embezzlement. Homeowner Bill of Rights posted in all communities within 6 months. 16 other states introduced similar legislation. Colorado passed their version. Florida, Texas, North Carolina, Oregon. The National HOA Reform Coalition formed with me as national spokesperson. Insurance companies created new liability standards for HOA coverage. Other corrupt HOA leaders got prosecuted using my case as precedent. A documentary filmmaker contacted me about an HOA abuse project. I agreed to participate, and I wrote a book. No Authority Without Accountability: One Widower's Fight Against HOA Tyranny. It hit bestseller lists in 4 states. If you could change one law to protect homeowners, what would it be? Tell legislators what you need. They're listening to stories like this. The bill signing ceremony included 47 state representatives, 2 senators, the governor, and me. When Governor Anderson handed me the commemorative pen used to sign the law, she said, "This legislation will protect thousands of Georgia families from the abuse you endured. Your wife and daughters would be proud." I held that pen and thought about Simone's face when we'd first bought our Maplewood Heights house. How excited she was about the community, the neighbors, the future we'd build. She never could have imagined how that dream turned into a nightmare, or how that nightmare would transform into something that protected strangers she'd never meet. That's legacy. People ask if I'd change what happened, if I'd pay that $5 fine differently, avoid the entire nightmare. My answer surprises them. 18 months after the trial, I still live in the Kentucky mansion. Pinnacle gave me to honor Simone. Her photo sits on the mantel, Zara on her left, India on her right, all 3 laughing at something I can't remember but wish I could. The house no longer feels empty. I've filled it with purpose, hosting HOA reform strategy sessions, counseling victims, writing my book. The grief counselor found his calling again, helping people process trauma I now understand from the inside. The wound isn't healed. It's just integrated, part of who I am, not the only thing I am. A reporter asked me last month, "Do you regret fighting back, given what it cost you emotionally?" I thought carefully. Fighting Brenda didn't cost me anything emotionally. She'd already taken everything when she showed up 3 days after I buried my daughters and told me they deserved to die. Fighting back gave me something: agency. Control over one thing in a life that felt completely out of control. Purpose when grief made everything meaningless. And eventually, healing that came from protecting others from the same abuse. So you do it again? In a heartbeat. Because the alternative was teaching myself that cruelty wins when good people stay quiet. And I couldn't live with that lesson. The honest cost assessment: $12,000 in legal fees, partially recovered through restitution. 18 months of intense emotional labor. Temporary career disruption while on leave. Ongoing PTSD management through therapy. Strain of public attention and media requests. What I gained. Systemic change protecting thousands of families across multiple states. Personal growth and resilience. I didn't know I possessed. New career as advocate, author, and national speaker. Meaningful relationships in the reform community. Sense of purpose honoring my family's memory. I've started dating again. Her name is Claire. She's a therapist who specializes in trauma. We met at a conference on grief counseling. She understands the holes in my heart that will never fully close, and she loves me anyway. We take it slow, no rush, no pressure. Healing isn't linear. Some days I'm fine. Some days I can't get out of bed. Claire gets it. What would you sacrifice to stand up for what's right? How do you measure the cost of fighting versus the cost of staying silent? I want your honest answer. Last week, I received a letter from a woman in Oregon. Her HOA president had issued $4,000 in bogus fines after her husband died of cancer. She'd been about to pay them, scared, alone, grieving, when she saw my interview online. She filed a complaint with her state attorney general, documented everything, and got the fines dismissed. The HOA president resigned under investigation. She enclosed a photo, her late husband's favorite chair, still in their living room, in the home she didn't have to sell. Her note said, "You saved our home. Thank you for being brave when I couldn't be." I keep that letter in my desk, because that's why we fight battles we didn't choose, not for ourselves. For the person 3 states away who needs to know that standing up is possible. 2 years after Brenda's conviction, I got the letter that proved some battles are worth every scar they leave behind. The new family in Brenda's former house, the Washingtons, installed a garden where she used to park her Escalade. Their kids ride bikes in the street without fear of violation notices. Their Christmas lights stay up until February because they want to, not because bylaws demand it. Mrs. Washington told me at the neighborhood barbecue, "We almost didn't buy here because of the reputation. But when we learned what you did, how the community changed, we knew this was where we wanted to raise our family." That's victory. Not a prison sentence. Not a viral video. Kids riding bikes without fear. Final updates on everyone. Brenda serves her sentence at a federal facility in West Virginia. 12 years remaining. Parole unlikely given the nature of her crimes. She completed her GED in prison and works in the library. We have no communication. She's banned from HOA service nationwide. Maplewood Heights HOA became a model of transparency and accountability. Property values increased 18% after reforms. 0 litigation in 2 years. There's a waiting list to move into the community. Robert Chen serves as HOA president. Nancy Williams handles finances with quarterly public audits. The board meets monthly with live-streamed sessions and open comment periods. I published my book, became a national advocate, returned to counseling part-time, specializing in grief and trauma. And Claire and I got engaged. Small ceremony planned for next spring, just close friends. Nothing fancy. Life rebuilt itself. Different. Not better or worse. Just different. The envelope arrived from Maplewood Heights last Tuesday. Handwriting I didn't recognize, postmarked from the community I'd fled. Inside was a letter from a teenage girl. "Dear Mr. Nichols, my name is Alyssa Chen. You probably don't remember me, but I was 11 when you lived here. I watched from my window when that mean HOA lady yelled at you after your family died. I watched my mom cry because she wanted to help, but was too scared. I watched you leave and thought the bad guys won. But then I watched the news when she got arrested. I watched the park dedication. I watched my mom volunteer on the new HOA board. And now I'm 13, and I'm writing an essay for school about ordinary people who do extraordinary things. I'm writing about you. Not because you're famous or rich or powerful, but because you showed me that standing up to bullies is possible, even when you're scared and sad and alone. My mom says your wife and daughters would be proud. I think they'd be right. Thank you for teaching me that good people can win. Love, Alyssa Chen P.S. I play clarinet, just like your daughter Zara did. When I practice, I think about her and play a little better, hoping she'd be proud too. I read that letter 3 times. Then I called Claire. I need to tell you something, I said. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. I just realized I'm okay, actually okay. For the first time since they died, I'm not just surviving, I'm living. She was quiet. Then, Trevor, that's beautiful. What changed? A 13-year-old girl who plays clarinet. She wrote me a letter saying I taught her that good people can win. And I realized that's what Simone would have wanted. Not for me to stay broken, for me to show people that kindness and justice can coexist. That fighting for what's right matters. That standing up changes things. Here's what 18 months of fighting an HOA tyrant taught me. Power without accountability always becomes abuse. Silence in the face of injustice always enables the abuser. And one person saying no, one person refusing to be silent, refusing to accept cruelty as normal, can light a fire that burns down empires built on fear. I didn't choose this fight. It chose me. But I chose how to respond, not with violence, not with matching her cruelty, with documentation, with truth, with a phone recording and the patience to let justice work. Some people call it revenge. I call it accountability. And accountability is just another word for love. Love for your community, love for future victims, love for the idea that we all deserve to be safe in our own homes. So here's my final question for you. When you face injustice, in your neighborhood, your workplace, your community, what will you choose? Will you stay quiet because it's easier? Or will you stand up even when standing costs you something? Tell me in the comments what you would have done in my shoes. Because somewhere right now, someone is reading this and deciding whether to fight their own Brenda Collier. Your story might be the encouragement they need. So let me ask you one more time. What would you do if your HOA president told you your family deserved to die over a $5 fine? Would you accept that cruelty? Or would you stand up even when everyone around you was too afraid to help? Here's the truth they don't teach in HOA bylaws. Bullies with clipboards and volunteer titles are still bullies. They count on your silence. They count on your fear. They count on your belief that they're too powerful to challenge. But here's what Brenda Collier learned the hard way. Power without accountability is just abuse waiting to be exposed. And when one person refuses to be afraid, everything changes. Not just for them, for everyone watching. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about everyday people standing up to entitled tyrants who think rules don't apply to them. Drop a comment telling me, have you dealt with HOA abuse? What happened? Did you fight back or walk away? I read every single comment, and your story might help someone else find the courage to act. Share this video with anyone fighting their own HOA battle. They need to know they're not alone, and that fighting back is possible. Remember, your property rights matter. Your dignity matters. Your peace in your own home matters. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be a victim. This is Ephraim with HOA Karen Stories, and this was how a $5 fine, a grief counselor's recording, and one insurance company connection brought down a tyrant who thought she was untouchable. Until next time, know your rights, document everything, and stand your ground.